All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, CRPN Central. This is Dr. Fox. Please like, comment, subscribe. Helps the mission more than you know so that I can do more for you. Whew. I'll tell you what, everyone, it has been a heck of a day, a heck of a starting to a Monday. How many of you are snowed in right now? Yes. How many of you have bitter cold? Yes. I don't know what's going on out in the industry right now, but I spent most of my morning addressing emails from very angry, grumpy people. I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, everyone. I know that there's a lot of things that people feel very strongly about. And I want to encourage this industry to be the shining light to a lot of people who are losing hope right now. Clinical research is by far one of the best places of hope that we can find. Our entire mission is to literally create miracles to save lives from things that we don't even know about yet in a very safe and proper way. So, for any of you out there who's super grumpy, who are having a terrible time, you're super stressed out, and everyone's yelling at you, first and foremost, I appreciate you. CRPN appreciates you, and we know that you are there for a reason. We are thankful for you. And for that reason, this is my gift to you. Please take that and tell someone else that you're thankful for them. Let's spread a little bit of a seed of love here on this crazy, crazy Monday of very, very high negativity throughout the world. All right, so welcome to Trial Charts, wrong one. TrialSide Chats. This is the open forum for CRPN to offer almost like office hours. If you have a question, if you are worried about research, if you wanted to share a story, if you wanted to feel a connection with a fellow professional and you can't afford crazy conferences at thousands of dollars a pop, come on into TrialSide Chats. That's what we're here for. So, just for everyone out there, CRPN is free for sites to join. You get free trial opportunities as the sponsor members bring them. And importantly, you have this community, things like the book, TrialSide chats. There's so much more in there for the sites and the sponsors so that we can kind of raise the bar of quality in this industry and we can get trials performed faster. All right, let's go on to the world here. Full disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer. I never said I was, and I never will claim to be. This is strictly experience based off of what we observe in the industry for our fellow sites and for sponsors and whatnot. If you are looking for a lawyer, though, Edens, ED, Science, Law. If you were watching it last week, I'm sorry, I was corrected. There is no period in between there. edlaw.com. Contact Edie. Her firm is growing. They do an amazing job. And in my opinion, they are one of the best in this specialty. All right. So if you do not agree to this disclaimer, turn off the video now. I don't need the view. I would rather just you be safe, and I'd rather us both have a general understanding. Let's get on to it. So as we wait, I have some things to show you. Here's your ground rules. This is going to be a place where we're going to really focus on anything clinical research, finance. This is a very sensitive subject, so it must be confidential at all times. If you decide to join or you share something and it is no longer confidential, please don't get your feelings hurt if you are immediately booted, because we're not going to tolerate that. No names, no organizations, only concepts. Free space, safe space. Let's talk about this. You can be confidential if you want. You're welcome to send me a LinkedIn message. Find me on LinkedIn. You're welcome to send something through any other venue you'd like if you want to be confidential. If you want to stand up and speak your voice, as long as you follow these rules, we should be good. So if we do that and we target the challenges, then maybe we can focus on best practices to help everyone have a much better Monday to come. Let's start with probably one of the biggest questions, one of the most common questions I'm ever asked in clinical research world. How should I pay my PI? This is huge, everyone. And there's a lot of opinion about this. And it's very, very different based off of whatever it is, whatever organization structure that you might have. The PI, you're going to compensate that PI in all of these different ways. Now, if you have the book right now, it's much further along in the book. If you go to page 174, There's an entire section on PI compensation. You'll talk about Sunshine Act. You'll talk about the compliance around it. You'll talk about what happens if the PI and how they are structured in the organization based off of how they're compensated. It's all there. Please feel free to take a look. Um, in short, I guess the best way I could answer this, and just like an icebreaker, so to speak, is it depends. So you have to really ask yourself, how is the PI incorporated? Are they part owner? Are they employee? Are they an independent contractor? Are they a subcontractor? How do you put that in your contracts? That's another question for Edie. Make sure that Edie helps you to build that correctly. There's no clean answer to that. And it's all based off of the relationship of that PI to the relationship of the site. All right. Today, we're going to go over a couple little sections in the book. Here's the book. There's the QR code to Amazon. If you want to order it directly from CRPN, send us a message. We're happy to ship it to you direct at 10% off and free shipping. So selfless plug there. Let's move on to the actual content. So far, we have talked about all of the different relationships of the stakeholders in the industry. We talked about sites, sponsors, CROs, what they contribute to the environment of the industry. We've talked about the vendors and how they contribute, primary, secondary, tertiary stakeholders, so to speak. Then after we went into the stakeholders, we talked about the relationship of those stakeholders and the culture of those stakeholders and how they view each other. Today, we're going to start the first section on chopping down that cycle of a clinical trial, specifically in a site's perspective, or this could be sponsor, CRO, whatever it might be. But from a site's perspective, you can chop the cycle of a clinical trial into 3 huge components. And by huge components, I mean these each have their own series of processes, their own stakeholders. Some are more active in one process than the other. Some kind of disappear or take more of a sideline when other things happen. But you start off with pre-study, and that's all it is. In any kind of a business, you're going to have business development. You don't have services that are contractually agreed upon yet, so you have to go find that business. You have to go find the sponsor to award you a trial as a site, and as a sponsor, you have to find sites who want to perform your trial. As a CRO, you have to find both sponsors and sites, with sponsors with an RFP, a request for proposal, and then sites when you start to look for site selection and things like that. Once you have identified and pretty much matched all of the stakeholders in pre-study phase, then comes the active study. Active study is what we all know as a clinical trial. It's the services to be performed. Generally, that is the site is performing a trial. It's overseen sometimes by a CRO, sometimes, and of course, there's a sponsor involved, IRB, everything. You're actually performing the trial. But once that site closes out and once the trial is no longer active or even considered active at the site, the responsibilities are not over, guys. Most of the time, after you've completed a trial at a site, you have a few decades at least of obligation, not only to report to the FDA if the FDA comes knocking, but also to maintain and archive all of the data that you collected during that study in a safe and accessible area. The Iron Mountains of the world, if you're going to store paper, the cloud storage, whatever it might be on if you're going to store electronically. But once you hit closeout, the work does not end, but the paycheck does. You're not allowed, you're not going to be paid for anything else. But unfortunately, according to law, you're going to have a huge time sink for responsibility to that data and accountability to the data. Remember that. And we'll get into that. But today, we're going to talk about pre-study. Pre-study is that really weird and exciting financial time when it comes to the industry where everyone's trying to work together. Everyone's trying to get that business opportunity. Everyone's super excited. You've got everyone coming together. Oh, we're going to get this enrollment. We're going to do that. Then you've got all of the negativity, all the negotiations. Oh, the site's asking for too much. We're going to do that. We're going to strong arm this. We're going to do that. And then you've got finally an agreement. So let's go into that real quick. All right. So this is on page 40 of the book. And this is actually one piece of a much bigger flow chart. You're going to see one of these for pre-study, active study, and post-study sections. But these are the major components. If you were to put the cycle of a clinical trial in a process map, this is what you would see. Of course, we have business development. You're not going to do any services provided unless you have the business opportunity to provide it. This is very, very common in clinical site world. There are brokers, they'll come in and they'll say, we'll hook you up with sponsors, and then we'll take a percentage of the revenue every single time that you enroll a patient. You've got, CRPN, they offer free trial opportunities. So you've got free venues, you've got paid venues, you've got invested venues, you've got direct to sponsor, direct to CRO, like preferred site venues. Business development is huge, everyone. And honestly, I can see why, because that is probably one of the largest asks of a site. I have calls all the time. Hey, I need trials. We're in trouble. What can we do? Business development is huge. And I know a number of people who are in the business development world. They have the contacts, they have the characteristics required to get in there and be confident and to say, we have sites that can help you, all kinds of options. At some point in time, there's going to be either the site is going to go to a sponsor CRO and they're going to say, hey, we'd really like to perform this trial, or the CRO and their site selection part of the RFP or the sponsor themselves, they're going to go directly to sites or the PI, and they're going to say, we've got this trial. Are you interested in this trial opportunity? Back and forth, matchmaking, all of these things. But importantly, what happens is eventually there's going to be, hey, you want to do this trial? Sure, I'm interested in the trial. Okay, sign this NDA. Sign this confidentiality notice. That is huge, because then what happens is it allows, on a legal level, the sponsor of the CRO to be able to share proprietary information to the site so that you can see what the heck is going on. CDAs and NDAs are very, very particular. There's sections in the book, but these are legal documents. If your organization is in any way, shape, or form concerned about certain parts of these legal documents, again, ED Law, seriously, if anything, just give them a call and see what they can do for you. I think that you will be very happy about it. Once you have a confidentiality notice established, signed, fully executed, then you're going to receive some sensitive information. Specifically, you're going to start receiving a feasibility. The feasibility is your first glimpse into the summary, into the requirements of the trial. Sometimes you don't have the full protocol, but it's your ability to kind of fill out a job application on behalf of your site. Feasibilities are kind of like part of what you saw in the last video. It's not just on the indications that you do, but there's going to be specific pieces of information such as your patient population, your site's capabilities, your PI. There may be certain questions on access to certain things. It's pretty much your site's job application to this clinical trial. You are applying to be considered to be a service provider for the sponsor's clinical trial. So the sponsor is going to look through the feasibilities. Sometimes they'll go through an HTML, kind of like a web link, click on this link, fill out this information. Sometimes it'll be a paper document. Sometimes it'll be a smart PDF, whatever it might be. You are submitting information to the sponsor. And just like an application, you would end up getting either a yay or a nay. The sponsor is going to come through and say, wow, yeah, I think we're interested in working with you. Or, well, honestly, sites out there, let me know how many times you actually get a Dear John letter, like a no, an actual answer from the sponsor and CRO. From my experience, most of the time, if you submit a feasibility and you don't hear anything, the answer is no. You don't actually get a no. But I'd love to hear from everyone else, like what you are running into with that. After a feasibility is performed, the sponsor wants to do a little bit of a deeper dive into your capabilities. They're going to want to have eyes on your site So they're going to schedule what we call a pre-study site visit, a PSSV. Many, many different names. In this podcast, we'll call it a PSSV. That's when they come to your site. They interview your personnel. They ask you certain things. They might ask to see some of your SOPs. I would not just hand over your manual. Let them see a couple SOPs, like the ones on informed consent or the ones on certain disaster preparedness or things like that. But your SOPs are not an open book. So don't do that. They may ask to say, no, we'll give you a couple pieces, but this is proprietary information. But after you have a successful PSSV with a CRO, most likely a CRA or a sponsor, you're going to get an award. They're going to say, congratulations, we really like you. We would like you to be a site for this study. Bam, you got the award. Congratulations. Now the work just starts. So you're going to have a number of things happening in the middle of the award. It's pretty much going to become separated out into the different pillars that we talked about, well, that we will talk about. There's a little bit of a hint. But you're going to have contract negotiation budget coming on one side. You're going to have regulatory IRB submission, 1572 on the other side. And then right down the middle is source creation and receiving of materials and products. They're going to start shipping you materials, all of your lab kits and things like that over in the operations world. So administrative, operations, and regulatory are all going to be trying to work parallel and in tandem at the same time to accomplish a mutual objective. And that, my friends, is site activation. So once you are onboarded, once the contract is signed, once you have all the materials, and once you are ready to go, you have a green light, your site is activated with an SIV, a site, help me out here, guys. I'm getting a brain fart, site initiation visit. And then you're going to start into your active phase of the study process. So this is all pre-study. It's very, very basic process map, but there's a lot that goes into this, all the way from getting the opportunity all the way down to getting a signed contract. There's a lot that you have to do in this section. And we will likely dive into these in much more detail later. But since this is focused on the finance part, let's look at what happens on the pre-study section on page 43 as far as the finance team goes. Finance team does a couple of things in pre-study. First of all, they analyze all of the contracts that you have already performed prior to for a complete cost assessment. In other words, sponsors and CROs will always come to your site and they'll always say, well, according to our crazy database, this is fair market value, so this is what we're going to pay. And that has nothing to do with your site, to be honest. You, as a research site, have to actively analyze your costs, assign the values that you want for the services performed, and be ready to negotiate those rates. That is key. So there's your feedback mechanism. Not only are you pulling in data from your active trials based off of the actual cost of things performed so that you are inventing your own fair market value, but then you apply that to the actual negotiation itself. I had a really cool win on this one this week. So we've started provision firewalls. And so what I ended up doing is we have a committee that reviews the contracts for each site that we work with. We form a committee. We make sure that committee is well educated and informed based off of their costs. And a number of the committees have started to create provisionary firewalls. In other words, when they get a trial or a budget, they'll sit there and say, oh, there's withholding in this contract. We're not even going to look at it until the withholding is removed. So before you even start the negotiation, you take one look, you say, oh, the committee will look at it after this is gone, like withholding or some of the really big predatory versions. And it's working. So in other words, we know that withholding, short range IWOs, we know that often even quarterly payments, those, it's just a smoke screen, everyone. So what happens is you say, oh, doesn't meet our quality standard. If you can change those, then we'll actually consider it. Honestly, that should have been part of a feasibility. If you have a site that says, no, we won't take any trials that have withholding, you could probably prevent a lot of trouble later on. I should also note that for any of you who've been in the industry for a while, there's a wonderful professional named David Volcano. He is the honorary president of SCRS. He just put out an amazing video explaining the impact of withholding and quarterly payments on a site's ability to perform their trials. So if I haven't done it yet, by the time you see this, remind me. I'd like to get that link with David's permission into the show notes because it is really, really cool on talking about the impact of a proper negotiation provision. Highly, highly recommend. And if you haven't heard about SCRS yet, you will. I guarantee it. They're one of the largest groups out there. High respects to them. And we really appreciate the advocacy that they do for our sites on a daily basis. Okay. So that's the end of the, I guess, lesson, so to speak, the basics that we go. Please feel free to reach out, send me a comment, let me know what you think, and I'm happy to address it on the next podcast. So let's talk about real quick our case studies. So I have a list of case studies now. A big thank you to everyone who sent your case studies over to CRPN, sent your questions to CRPN. That's what we're here to do. We're here to serve. Most of the people want to be anonymous. They don't want to get in trouble. We do have people from sponsors and CROs sending things saying, hey, I really want to help, but I can't compromise my job. And that's okay. High respects. Really, really thankful for you. And thank you for being part of this community. We're not here to rat anyone out. And I definitely want to make sure that nobody's punished for trying to do the right thing. So here's a letter from our community. And it says, a CRO negotiator tells me that they have to mirror a previous trial's budget because it hasn't been long enough between trials to change costs. How many of you have heard that? If you've negotiated, I almost guarantee you've heard that. But we know that we lost money in the last trial, and they won't take no for an answer. What should we do? So, community, what do you think we should do in this case? If you're having a negotiator saying, oh, well, trial A was at this rate, and we just negotiated that 6 months. So my sponsor people won't allow me to go any higher than trial A because it hasn't been long enough between trial A and B. So now you have to take what we gave you in trial B. Yep, happens all the time. So there's a couple of things to consider here, and there are some sponsors out there who are huge sticklers on here. I mean, they've got the script down. They know exactly what they're doing. They know how to strong arm sites into rates that sites have previously agreed upon. So when it comes to mirroring a budget, and this can be super powerful on both sides. If a site and sponsor mutually want to mirror, they say, yeah, sure, we can agree to the past budget. Nothing much has changed. That's fine. It is voluntary. It is never forced. And there's a number of reasons why behind this. Number one is going back to the world of independent contractor world. Unless you have some form of a master agreement, master rate sheet, master fee schedule, anything like that, it doesn't matter what you agreed upon in the past. It doesn't matter what you talked about on the phone. It doesn't even matter if you did it last week. It is a completely separate and individual relationship sites. Now, there will be sponsors that play chicken and they'll just say, take it or leave it. If you're not going to do this, then we just won't work with you. And honestly, I don't know if you really want to work with someone like that. So I have managed this in a number of ways. This is also a very good reason why sites you have that committee that analyzes the costs of each trial so that you can go back and ensure that it was responsibly resourced to protect patient safety and quality of data. In this case, if you had the data behind it and you said, well, yes, we know what you agreed upon on trial A, but we ran the numbers, we crunched the numbers, we actually identified that we lost money on trial A, and my committee is not going to allow us to repeat the same mistake. So here's the new budget. I'm sorry, but there's nothing more that I can do about it. That's number one. You're pretty much just saying there's data, trial A was wrong, we can't make the same mistake. Done. The other one is sometimes you can sit there and say, wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know that we had a master fee schedule in place. Could you please show me the contractual language, show me the master fee schedule that says that we're allowed or that we are obligated to agree to a past budget? And yeah, if we have a legal agreement and we agreed to a past budget, then okay, we'll have to honor it. If not, if there is not a master rate sheet in place, if there's not a legal obligation to agree to a budget of the past, I'm sorry, but we can't do that. So one thing is important, and this goes back to David Volcano. I really hope that you take the time to watch that video. And I've heard him say this a few times, but he always said sponsors have gone to sites and sites have gone to sponsors, and they say, well, why in the world are sites agreeing to things like this? Why are they agreeing to predatory provisions? Why are they agreeing to crazy costs? Why are they agreeing to all of this work without a whole lot of compensation? And when they are getting paid, it's super duper late. And the answer was because sites let them. The only reason we are in this problem right now is because one, you have people who are pushing sites into irresponsible contracts. And that's the site's fault. Sites, I know you're desperate sometimes. I know we need this trial or we can't make payroll. I get it, but that desperation screws everyone. Take that seriously. As soon as possible, don't be desperate, period. You need to sit there and say, is this trial a good fit for my site? Are they responsibly resourcing this trial? Do I have the choice to accept this trial and to do it properly? Or am I being forced in it because I don't have another option? That is dangerous for your patients. And I highly, highly recommend if you run into this situation, you can either take a stand and say, I'm sorry, but we're not honoring a past contract and there's no legal obligation for us to do it. You might lose the trial. I'm going to tell you that right now, depending on the sponsor you're working with. Or I have gotten many a master fee schedule with this conversation right here. I'm so sorry. I didn't know we had a master fee schedule. Could you please show it to me? Show me the contract. And that opens a door. It's, well, actually, you don't have a master fee schedule, but we would love to work on one with you. And that is a really, really cool opportunity. I would highly recommend if you ever have an opportunity to get into that, you're going to feel the efficiency of these negotiations so it's not so burdensome. All right. So let's go on to the next case study. One of our coordinators just resigned. It's very common. Coordinators are the staple of this industry, and odds are sites cannot afford to pay salaries that sponsors and CROs can. So coordinators resign all the time. That's very common, especially your superstars, because they can move higher. As we were taking over their trials, we identified invoiceable items that they never reported to the finance team. Yep. How many of you have seen that? We sent the invoices for legitimate contractual costs, but the CRO rejected them. They said it's been too long. What the heck is happening here? Yep. This has happened on a couple of times when CRPN starts working with new sites and those sites do not have managed contracts. And so we start looking and digging and oh my gosh, you've got tens of thousands of dollars here that was never claimed. We'll send the invoice. And every once in a while, you'll get this sponsor who they'll look at that and say, oh, well, your IWO has expired. I'm sorry, but even though you did the work, we're not obligated to pay you. Sites, I have to tell you, IWOs or invoiceable windows of opportunity are one of the strongest unspoken things that are in this industry. Nobody talks about them. In fact, IWO, Invoiceable Window of Opportunity, was something I made up. That was an acronym that I did. I found out later that from other contracts that there's a legal term called the long stop date. And you can call it a long stop, but I prefer IWO. So if you ever hear me say IWO, it is defined as the amount of time that you have to send invoices for payments or for services provided. IWOs almost start every single time in contracts by occurrence. In other words, it's use it or lose it. If you do something, a clock starts and you have a certain number of days. I have seen between 45 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. You have a number of days since something was performed, a reconsent, a protocol amendment, an X-ray, an MRI. That's a big one, huge amount of money. If you don't send an invoice within the amount of time of performing that activity, and you have in your contract an IWO by occurrence, you literally just did work for free, and now the sponsor is not legally required to pay you. Not good. Not good, sponsors. What a ruthless thing to do. Not only are sites busting their butts to try to do a trial for you, but you literally create a loophole so that they're not going to get paid for all of this hard work. And I know sponsors and CROs out there, oh, but the sites are just going to wait until the very end of the trial and then send us this big check, this big bolus thing. Okay, I get it. You're trying to plan your cash flow, but this is probably not the way to do it. One thing you could consider, sponsors, is making as many things auto pay as possible. And I don't mean startup and closeout. I mean all of the things that happen anyway. Monitoring visits, really? You have a log, you have everything you need. You even enter things into the EDC. Why can't monitoring visits be auto paid? Reconsents, protocol amendments, all of these things that are just left on the table, they could be auto paid and you wouldn't even have to worry about an IWO. Sites, IWOs almost always start by occurrence. It's unfortunate and you have to watch out for it, but it happens. So you have to have a very, very strong communication plan with your finance team to make sure that you are capturing invoices as soon as possible. And by as soon as possible, I mean the day that something happens, your finance team needs to know about it. At the very least, weekly. But do not wait months or for every monitoring visit or whatever it might be. Do not wait to tell your finance team about things because odds are you just did work for free. And I'm sorry to say that. The counter on that for negotiations, and I'm sure we'll go over this, but it's that word occurrence. Strike it. Occurrence is not the place to go. Close out. It's so many days of site closeout. That gives you, as long as you are actively performing services on a trial, you have the opportunity to get the money for it. And you're going to get pushback, but that needs to be a standard. And it's helped a lot of sites. So to this site, I'm sorry, I don't know the details of the contract. I don't know the cost. I don't know anything like that. I hope it wasn't a lot of money. But if the IWO in the contract was based off of occurrence and you're pulling in like a year or 2 years worth of work and you're trying to send an invoice, you're going to get rejected, and they are entitled to do that. Legally, they do not have to pay you. And you're welcome to confirm that with Edie over at Edie Law. Okay. The sponsor just made our regulatory team process an IRB amendment. It substantially changes the trial's budget. But we haven't seen a legal amendment. We haven't seen a legal amendment to match the change in costs. What should we do? This is huge on an ethics level, ethics. This happens all the time. Many times, sometimes sponsors sit there and say, oh, well, we really don't need visit 3. We can skip it. So let's just put a protocol amendment. We're just going to strike visit 3 out of the whole thing, and that's it. Or I think we're going to cut the trial short. We've got plenty of data. We're going to knock a year off of the trial. We'll be fine. Or it goes the other way around where it's, hey, we're adding these visits because our filings say that we need additional data. And so we're going to have to do this one way or the other. Oh, adding x rays, adding procedures, adding things like that, adding laboratory assessments, the budget and the contract and the protocol can be in a huge amount of flux throughout the trial. And almost 100% of the time, your CRA is going to be super duper gung ho. Here's an IRB protocol amendment. It's done. We've got to get this activated. The next time your patients are on, you've got to reconsent them because it's got to be the current version of the ICF. And you're sitting there saying, that's great, but what about money? So we're not greedy folk here, but we have to have a budget that lines up with the protocol. What's going on? Oh, well, we submitted a ticket over to the CRO. We're going to have some budget people contact your budget people eventually, and we'll just go from there. And then months go by, 6 months go by, things happen, and your finance team finally gets a notification from the CRO negotiator. Hey, we're here for this contract amendment for this IRB protocol that you've had active for 6 months. So let's go ahead and get this done. It's tricky. And I think it's a very sensitive piece of information. You have to understand what's going on with the patient. Are these things life-saving? Is the patient dependent on this? Could it compromise patient safety, or could it do something to the patient if there were delays or a window or something like that? If it's a study where, let's say it's a one-time blood draw study, and there's not really, there's not like a safety concern for the patients because any patients after the amendment, they it's not going to compromise the patients from before. It's only going to impact any patient that signs on afterward. You can sit there and say, hey, you know what? We're not going to enroll any more patients until we get a protocol amendment, a contract amendment. And so there you go. So many times in that case where you kind of take a hard stance and say, I'm sorry, but this is out of scope. Out of scope is the key word. You sit there and say, out of scope, need a contract amendment. Once we get a contract amendment, then we'll proceed. That's one thing. And that's the safest thing. You may lose out on patient visits, but at least you're going to have assurance of payment. The tricky part is where you have those long-term patient visits where the patient, you can't just pull a patient off. You can never compromise patient safety for this. I mean, that's my own personal opinion, but as a site director, anytime I saw a trial that was substantially helping a patient and there was not legal backing behind it, I would work in good faith, sometimes get a letter of good faith from the sponsors saying that we will agree to negotiate this at a future time, assuming one, you can backdate it to the date of the protocol activation, and two, that you have assurance of payment for the services provided. It's hairy. Honestly, sponsors and CROs, when you put the cart before the horse like that, you're just going to cause problems. That's all there is to it. What if you come back and you decide to chop the budget in half and the site's like, yeah, we're not doing that? Then you have a patient involved. You should really shouldn't get to that point. But sites, if you run into this, you have to make a judgment call. Contact your administration, figure out, or talk to your PI, figure out what this could do to the patient, and then try to work the legal around it. You can, and it's possible, but it's going to have to be a case by case basis. If you backdate it, make sure that you get a delta payment. So we have had a number of situations where there was a protocol amendment involved or visits involved, and there were actually points where there were visits that were never in the contract because they were there, and then another protocol amendment happened and they weren't. So now you've got these weird limbo visits where they're just not in the contract, so nobody wants to pay it, but they're in the IRB approved protocol. Sometimes it can get really tricky in a trial, but make sure that you have assurance that somehow, some way, by the time it's all said and done, you are constantly covered both in budget and in contract for whatever visit a trial is performing. Okay, so please feel free to bring them up, talk about them. If you want to share them, come on the stage. Let's have a talk. Remember the ground rules. And if you want to be anonymous, please feel free to send them over, and we'll be sure to get them in the next show. Okay, so I think 40 minutes is the key here, everyone. I don't want to keep you too long. 40 minutes is perfect. Eventually, CRPN is going to have some guests here. We'll be going back and forth, trying to figure out more of the story sharing. So you won't always have to listen to me here. But importantly, feel free to connect to CRPN. There's the website, LinkedIn, YouTube. I'm all over the place. If you want me, catch me. It'll be great. Again, remember, CRPN is free for sites to join. It's free for free community, free trial opportunities, and very affordable for sponsors and CROs. Just remember that. Thank you so much to everyone for supporting the CRPN mission. We are here to help our community to be better. This is Dr. Fox. Please like, comment, subscribe, share your voice. I'll see you next time. Wait a minute. I didn't do it yet. I see a comment. I'm here, Dr. Fox. Ryan's here. Everyone, I'm sorry. I got on a rant. Ryan, thank you so much for tuning in. If you ever want to come on the show, let me know. We'll be here. All right. Dr. Fox, like, comment, subscribe, share your voice. See you next time.